How's it going, Euan?
Pretty good, dude. How are you?
Good. Just battling an ankle injury.
Yeah, poor guy.
I know once you get past 35,
it's all downhill from there.
Yeah.
That's that.
Everything just starts breaking and getting sore for whatever reason. I never thought I'd see the day when it did, but because I always like when I heard it from my cousins or from older friends, and I'm like, that'll never happen. And I literally woke up and I was like, what is that? So yeah,
Getting old.
yeah. So yeah, man. So I have to point out that this is actually really cool to talk to you because I first discovered you probably like 2 or 3 years ago. You did a wedding for one of my friends. You photographed a wedding, and I was like, wow, he's really great, And then and I think I started following you. I don't know if it was your Facebook or your Instagram, but then I realized that you were like, you were heavily involved with sharks.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, who is this guy? Because this guy is like, you were working for the San Jose Sharks.
Mm-hmm.
You were photographing live sharks in the water. You were in commercials with the sharks. And I'm like, this guy stole my life. But no, but seriously, I mean, I loved your work. And then
Thanks, man.
it was really cool that we actually connected, I think kind of late last year. And I bought a shark photo off of you, which we'll get into in a second. So anyway, man, it's just really cool that you're here. I was a fan of yours, and now we're friends. It's just cool. And
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. So I think, what everybody would like to know is how did you get into photography and art and all that type of stuff that you do?
Sure. So it's kind of a weird tale. I started. My mom's she's a professional artist. She was a sculpturist, and she did lots of oil painting and all the rest. Yeah. So my dad's an engineer, so it's kind of like both sides of the brain. But my dad's really gifted with sketching and drafting and stuff too. So ever since I was really small, I always kind of had art around and painting and whatever it is. And I ended up going to art school. I grew up all over the world. I was born in England, but I lived in Italy and New Zealand and all over the place as I was a kid. And then I ended up, my parents ended up moving back to England when I was in high school. So I finished high school there. Art was, I was two things. It was sports and art all the way since I was small too. Sports were a big part, but it came to the end of high school and I decided I'd want to go to art school. It came to the end of high school and I decided I wanted to go to art school. Yeah. And, so I applied to the Academy of Art in San Francisco and I went there for illustration. I actually started as industrial design because I wanted to design cars or fun stuff like that. Yeah. But I quickly kind of found that the creative itch that I was going after it wasn't going to get filled there. Yeah. It was way too kind of regimented and all the rest. In fact, a funny story, the first class I went to in the industrial design department, they're like, we all sat down and the guy's like, so like who in here wants to design the next Ferrari? And like, everyone raised their hand. And he's like, okay, well, none of you guys are going to do that. He's like, you're all going to design like car handles for minivans for the next 40 years. And then maybe you'll get to design like a crossover SUV or something like that.
All right.
and then everyone laughed. And he's like, if you want to design something really fun or you want to draw some fun stuff, go become an illustrator. And everyone laughed again. And I literally just picked my stuff up and walked out of the room. I was just like, yeah, I started taking like school. Not that I didn't take it seriously. I just, the way I learn, I'm very visual. So I'm always like creativity obviously plays into that big time. I felt like art school, I started really applying myself there just because it was obviously art. So anyway, I went into illustration and, I started taking the classes in that. And then I took a copyright class that we all had to take. And, since I was small, you're always looking at photos like, oh, I want to draw that. I want to paint that. So you start, you just draw or paint off of a magazine or photo, whatever. And then, so this guy really started teaching us about copyright infringement and all that kind of good stuff. And so I was like, oh man, I got to learn how to like take these photos myself. Yeah. So, I just picked up a camera and at that time I had taken in high school, I went like for a summer, I took a photography class and it was film. and learn how to develop and how to darkroom and all that. And it was actually probably invaluable to my photography career because it gave me a grounding right off the bat before any digital was just coming into play at the time. But it was really like, really learning how to use the mechanics of a camera, like the real nuts and bolts, which is invaluable for a photographer. So,
and getting it right in the camera first.
Yeah, which is big, and big for multiple reasons, but mainly just for time saving now. Like, So I went into, I came in this copyright class, decided to pick up a camera again and kind of play with it. And then this kind of almost like love affair kind of took off, where I just started like, I'm like a YouTube photographer pretty much. It was like, how do I do this? And then there's so many resources online, man, that like, I never took any photo class. Actually, that's a lie. I think I took one in college, but it was not good. Like it was so bad. I don't even remember what was in it. Like it was kind of filling at the end. I think it was filling credits, but, mainly, and 98% of what I learned was just a desire after like seeing, how do I make motion blur, or how do I, and then like applying that to the next step, and then seeing something else, and then lay down. So then it just kind of started snowballing, and then someone asked me to shoot their wedding. It was actually my wife's aunt, and it was the first wedding. I didn't know what. Looking back on it, like, if she watches this, I'm sorry, but like, it was an eye-opening experience. But I had fun doing it because it was my first really gig in photography, like serious. I'd done little things other than that, but like this, shooting someone's wedding is a huge ordeal. And some people I see jumping into that game, like kind of like, oh yeah, I'll shoot your wedding. And like there's no redos.
Nope.
So it's you really, as a photographer, have got to know. Well, you got to know your gear inside and out. And so you walking, that's just irresponsible if you're going to go document someone's once in a lifetime thing and you don't know what you're doing and you're going to charge them money for it. Like so, I'd like to think I knew a lot then. I didn't, but I did it anyway, and it was a learning experience. The photos I think they came out, some of them were pretty good, but it was definitely like, it was like, if I want to do this seriously, I really got to. Sure. So I just kept taking photos, and anyone who asked me, like, we were kind of talking about this earlier with people's mentality. A lot of people will be like, oh, how do you take these photos? Like, when they see one of my photos and stuff, a lot of people, and this goes for any kind of profession, the amount of hours and the amount of time and effort it takes to get to that point it's staggering, and there's no quick way around it. No, like there isn't. When someone sees a bodybuilder, like there's no, everyone's like, oh, that's cool. Not everyone, but like people like, yearn after like stuff they don't have like that, but everyone wants it immediately. And it's there's so much that goes into that. And that's why sometimes when you tell people how much stuff costs, they're like, oh, that's like, wow, it's very expensive. But they're like, well, there's like, 15 years of absolutely grinding to the bone to get to this point. Right. Like you can go somewhere else. It just kind of, it is what it is. It costs what it costs. So anyway, I've jumped way ahead, but
no. And that's, we'll actually get back to that. Cause I think I do want to hear more about what you have to say on that. Cause I think that's important, especially for, now more and more people are getting into photography and video because the cameras are cheaper. Like you said, there's online resources that teach you everything. So anyway, so continue. So you worked on your aunt's wedding. So I finished, managed to finish school. I got my degree, got out, and I was working at the time as a graphic designer for Budweiser. Oh, very cool.
So, and that was an awesome job. Had really fun. Did all the graphics, a lot of the graphics in the Oakland Coliseum that's Bud related, or the arena, and then all the liquor stores and stuff around there. So it was a really fun job, especially being in art school. And I got to work with a lot of my good friends there at the place too. We had a great time. But the whole time I was kind of I was starting to get this photography bug. And I was just anywhere I could take photos. I remember just taking my camera out behind the building. We worked in this at the foot of the maze in Oakland. This kind of the building was nice, but it was a giant like warehouse really. In a not great area of Oakland, West Oakland. If people know that area, it's not, but it has amazing textures and like old buildings and stuff that's pretty fun to photograph. So that provided a lot of subjects and all that to kind of practice these new things that I was learning. And so I was shooting for a while, just like picking up odds and ends here and there. And then I randomly had a friend who actually recently passed away.
Sorry to hear that.
It's all right. He was an incredible dude. He was a filmmaker, and he was shooting a film up on Mount Diablo, and they had this big setup, and they had this big catering table stuff, and I'm there, and he just asked me to come up to capture some behind the scenes stuff, So I was like, oh yeah, I'm eager to do that. So I went up and I was taking these photos. And I was standing next to the service table, and this guy was there, and he just came over to me and he started talking about cameras, and like, that's my kryptonite. I'll just sit there and talk cameras till I'm blue in the face.
Yeah.
And he had a question about one of his cameras, like, oh yeah, well, you could do this and you could do that, or you could get this, or this one, So we sat there talking for quite a long time. I probably should have been shooting at the time, but I was just too busy talking.
Sure, yeah.
And at the end of the conversation, he's like, oh, really nice meeting you, blah, blah. If you ever feel like you want to come to Clorox, here's my card. And he happened to be, I think he was one of the high ups in HR for Clorox. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, cool. So I went back, and I'd kind of done what I could do at Budweiser. Like it was an awesome job while I was there, but it was kind of like it had filled its purpose. And I was like, I wanted something more,
Yeah, sure.
So I was like, yeah, sure. So I actually emailed him the next day, sent him my resume, and then he passed it on to the art director that was at Clorox at the time. I went in for an interview, and the art director was really nice, and he's like, yeah, your design works okay, but like we're in need of an illustrator. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, cool. In my head, I'm like, well, it's a foot in the door, because they have a big photo department and all the rest kind of thing. Yeah. So, and then my boss, who's my boss now, walked in, and he's like, no, we don't have any room, and just turned and walked out. And I was just like, I was going so well with the head guy. Yeah. So I make fun of him all the time for that. And I've actually I still work there. I've been there for almost 12 years now. Cool. But that role evolved. I came in, I was helping with photography, but I was doing design work for them. But now I do all their kind of lifestyle stuff, and I travel a bit for them, but I cover all their big corporate events, I still do some design, but it's a little of everything. It's been an incredible job, that place. It's provided me with a bunch of opportunities that I got to shoot NASCAR through them. I've shot stuff for Burt's Bees. In fact, I just actually got an email yesterday. I'm going to be doing some like shorts for Burt's Bees social media stuff. Oh, very cool. So it's like we were talking earlier with that whole kind of constantly need to be doing stuff. Mm-hmm. It's been an incredible job, because it's allowed me avenues to like everything from flying drones. Like I fly drones for them. I do I draw, I make videos, I do all that kind of stuff. So it was a good all around thing.
They allow you to be creative.
They allow me to be creative, but they also allow me to like put my vision to stuff, which is in a corporate environment, it's very rare. It's usually like, and I mean, we have briefs and all that, but it's usually, for the stuff that we're working on, it's usually like, oh, how would you do it? Like, this is what we'd like to do. Like, how would you execute this? So
they trust you. Yeah. They trust your input,
which has been cool. Yeah. And probably the reason I've been there this long still, like they kind of, they've allowed me to keep kind of pushing the boundaries of what corporate, what they would allow and not. So the whole time I was doing that, I was shooting weddings. I started shooting weddings a lot, kind of building that up. It was doing really well, but it's being a one-man band in a wedding is very stressful. Sure. Not so much the day of, because it's just covering the event, and it's really fun. it's really fun. The 10 minutes you get after the service, like or the 40 minutes or whatever you get with the couple.
Mhm.
Like if I could just come in and shoot that part,
Yeah,
like I would,
that'd be
like,
the best,
I'd still be doing it. But it's like, you know, it's the weeks on end of editing afterwards, these thousands and thousands of images that, it just takes a grind sitting behind your computer. As a photographer, everyone's like, oh, that sounds like a really fun job, where it is. But then, you know, getting back to that, like, people don't understand really what it takes and what it all goes into. Because you're paying me for this whole time. You don't want just one image, like good
exactly.
image. You want, you know, you're covering the event. So it's like, you got to, and you're not going to get the next wedding if you completely mess this up.
Yeah.
So, so like I said, I did that for a long time. And then kind of, I started just kind of getting, burnt out's not the right word for it. 'Cause it was good money and it was still creative and all that, but I was starting to shoot the same places over and over again. Sure. And, it's hard to, as a photographer, to shoot the same place and not go to the exact same spot where you took that last photo of the couple, and you know you're going to get a ringer right there.
Yeah.
And you know, you kind of, it kind of takes for me, it kind of took the fun out of it.
Yeah, sure.
Which is stupid because it's like, it's creating an incredible product and people love it, and that's why you're there. But at the same time, it's like, I'm more like, people would go, I'd start shooting places and they'd be like, do you want to come see the venue beforehand? No. Like I don't, and that might be foolish, but for me, I love getting there and then looking and
getting a feel for it.
I don't want to see other photographers work at the place. I want to get in there, see where I would take the photos, and then make my own art. In the area. I don't want to copy someone else, or I don't want to copy myself. Like, I don't want to do the same spot every single time. So, but that's risky because sometimes, you know, it's not going to be as good as the last one, but only you really know that. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, you touched upon something where, I mean, it's hard not to, when you know the lighting is going to be really perfect, and that if you angle them a certain way, you're going to get the backlight, and you're going to get some fill, and you're going to get this, and then if you just, you know, and so you know that you're going to get that shot, but then at the same time, if you try to switch it up the day of or in that moment, it's almost like comedians trying new material.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
Like with a big show.
Yep.
You know, you don't do that.
No.
You know, so
you stick to your good stuff, and like, I would like to say that I would always change it up, and I wouldn't. And that's kind of, I think, why I ended up just kind of putting a stop to it. To weddings in general, it's just because I was like, unless it was some crazy place where I got to go and document more, which was fun. But so I would go back to the same spot and do the same photos, and like, those people don't know that other people's photos look exactly like theirs, but in my head I did, and that's not. It's almost became like an algorithm. Like, you just plug these X and Y in, and then you get this output kind of thing. So that's not why I started doing photography. Obviously I wasn't going to paint them, but it was like, it was like this, it did turn into more. It was creating art. And so along that, I started, I was still illustrating and stuff. And, I had a friend that I worked at Clorox with. She ended up going off and handling, she was doing all the design for the San Jose Sharks. And, she's a great friend, and she was like, hey, we have this opportunity. We need some, like, they needed a drawing for their season ticket holders for something. And it was this easy little, so I did it. It was like these, lockers, and they had like, it was a drawing of like Couture, I think Thornton, someone else. It was like, and so I had to illustrate, and then Podolsky's had like his shield, like Captain America's shield.
Yeah,
and
I think I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
So they ended up, I thought that was just going to be a small thing, but they ended up printing it like, it was like, as you walked into SAP, it was this like 28-foot by 12-foot banner that was like hanging up top.
Yeah.
And I remember coming in the first, like, she's like, hey, you should come to the game, check it out. And I was like, okay, God, I thought they were going to be like give away at the door, you know? And I walked in, I'm like, oh my God.
Wow.
So that kind of like that relationship snowballed as well. which was great. And this is probably a good time to like mention what we were talking about earlier too, about 9 times out of 10, I mean, hard work, you can never say enough good things about hard work.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, that's the stupid thing to say, but like, obviously if you stick at something long enough, but I think not as equal, but very high up there is just being generally a nice person.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And networking, they always say, is very important, but like to, just to be positive and to, for lack of a better term, like put positivity out there,
exactly.
kind of thing. If people see you're warm and open and inviting, like there's more chance they're going to talk to you and
exactly.
then, lead to kind of interesting opportunities.
Yeah.
But what's really important about those opportunities, if they're gracious enough to extend them, is that you have to crush them.
Yeah.
Like if they're going to open it up and give you those opportunities, you have to capitalize on every single one. And some people take that for granted when people, if it's, and I've heard arguments on both sides, like, giving your work away for free and like the pros and cons about it. And obviously when you're established, it's easier to do that kind of stuff, 'cause you can feel like, oh, I'm giving back or whatever it is. But starting out, it's tough because like you want to build your brand and what you're worth and all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that I did that stuff for the Sharks for free, but it was more like, oh, this is an amazing opportunity.
Huge
and
opportunity.
Maybe if I do really well, there'll be more coming out of it. And there was. So I did a couple more sketch things for him, and then in the back of my mind, I was just like, please let me shoot a game. Like, let me shoot something. And if I'm completely honest, I wasn't a huge hockey fan. Like I'd seen hockey. I knew some of the players and stuff, but it wasn't like, I'm from England originally. So like I'm a huge soccer fan and rugby. And so for me, it was like, oh, but saying that I loved the atmosphere. I loved, like, going to a game. Once you've been to one Sharks game, you're just like, this is incredible. The atmosphere, and it felt very, it's closed. It felt very kind of European, stadium atmosphere when you're in there and stuff.
It's funny you say that, because I took Eric. So Eric, my mentor, came out, and actually Euan was in a spec commercial that we shot. And I took Eric to a Sharks game, and never been to a hockey game before, and he was like hooked. Yeah. After the game, he couldn't stop talking about the speed, the energy, the intensity. Yeah. He couldn't. Yeah. So he's hooked. So I said you're going to be a true Sharks fan if you wear that jersey to a Dallas Stars game. So we'll see. We'll see if he does.
We'll report back. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. So like I'd done a couple more drawings for them, and then I was like, in the back of my mind, I was like, I'd love to shoot or capture something, like capture some content photo wise for these guys. So I kind of dropped that hint to her. I was just like, hey, if you guys ever need some, photo stuff, I'd love to. And she's like, yeah, it's interesting. We have a social media team, but, and we have some photographers, but they mainly do inside, covering the games and stuff. Right. And to me, shooting, like photographing hockey, like we were talking about earlier, it's like the TV doesn't do it justice how fast those guys are moving. And I mean, well, people, you can watch TV and try and when they take a shot, try and see where the puck's gone. Right. Yeah. So like any other sport or any sports photographer will tell you, like half of it's anticipation, where the puck's going to be, where the play's going to happen, kind of thing. So I would learn that the hard way a lot of times, but they came at me and they're like, hey, it started by, they needed, like, it's very like just kind of boring shooting signage when they do these recaps for their sponsors every year. Yeah. And like, this was this game, and this your banner was here during this time period. Or like shooting the bowl with it's pretty impressive when they have all the LEDs lit up for like Safeway or whoever it is, and it's all So getting those kind of shots. So I started doing some of those, but I would sneak in a couple of like kids interacting with Sharky or some kind of like an interesting take on something, and then I think that started kind of piquing their interest. And
yeah, sure.
So they're like, hey, do you want to cover this event we're having, or Do you want to, and so I started shooting a lot for their foundation, which is incredible, by the way.
Yeah.
The Sharks Foundation. I think we talked about that before, but they do like some incredible outreach for the community and stuff. So, that got me the whole time I'm networking, talking to people and kind of becoming a thing there, which was cool. And, it just so happened. So I shot, I think that the season came to an end. I'd done a couple events for the foundation, and I'd shot more of the sponsor signage and all that, and it worked out really well because I was then obviously working for Clorox, but I was able to, these are in the afternoon or evening, so I was able to go there and come back and do all that kind of stuff. So I think it started building over the next year too. I started shooting some more, and then it was more capturing the players when they arrive, and it was a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, which for me, a valuable lesson I took out of this is because I wasn't fully aware of everything that went into being a hockey player, right? Yeah. Like I understood what hockey was, but you don't really do that. You get to the game, unless you're like a diehard fan, you're like, oh, I wonder what they're doing right now. You're just there to like, you're in the atmosphere. You're like, oh, I got some food and a drink, and I'm, watching these guys go at it, and like, this is cool. So I was coming at it from a complete novice point of view. So for me, it was kind of like fresh eyes on a situation. And so if it was like me in like Manchester United's locker room or something like that, where I've just been like starstruck the whole time and just, it'd probably been a lot harder for me to do my job. Yeah. Yeah. But because I didn't have that, I pretty much used it to my advantage. And I didn't really think about this till after, but, I just was able to kind of try and create art or stuff that I'm like, I have a love affair with the way light interacts with things. I think all photographers, videographers do, but in all my work, all my photo stuff, that is my subject. It's a weird thing to say, but that's like, it could be anything, but like the way light interacts with it, if it's interesting or different, like you can make a picture out of that easily. Yeah. So, stadiums are, especially closed stadiums or ones where the light is so heavily controlled, are very tough areas to photograph, make videos, anything, because your settings are constantly changing. Yep. And you have to, this goes back to knowing your gear really well. For anyone who's just starting out in photography or wants a tip, I'm just like reading your manual is going to be very dry and boring. But so my advice would be just take your camera and just start taking photos until your finger breaks. Like learn what all your buttons do, just learn it, because there's nothing more valuable or there's nothing more frustrating than being in a situation where you have to capture content or some kind of photo and you're just like, I don't know how to make my camera do that. You know, exactly. If you rely on these settings that are built into the camera, while they're good stepping stones to get you to you need in the end to know exactly what they're doing when they're implementing, because your camera is trying to take a nicely, evenly exposed image at all time. It doesn't know what the scene is. It doesn't know what you're trying to say. Nope. So when you're trying to get your own look and feel, which is very important to set yourself apart, we were talking about earlier, obviously cameras are getting less expensive and higher quality and more higher resolution and all that. So this easy access to cameras to gear itself creates a lot of photographers. And people always go like, does that scare you? I'm like, no, it doesn't. And I love teaching. I love telling people about photography because you can learn how to use a camera the correct way. But also like sometimes in certain instances, using it, what the camera think would be the correct way is not the correct way to take the photo. Yeah. So it's like, that's what separates photographers and just anyone with a camera. That's where you make your money. That's why they pay you to take those kind of photos. And that only comes through years of taking photos and understanding where to implement those kind of things. So, I mean, man, just shooting in there for a year, like I came out of there a way better photographer than I went in, just because like I, on the fly, had to be able to like, oh, dude, I need to like shoot my ISO through the roof here. Or I didn't worry so much about... In the beginning, I didn't worry so much about color temperature because I was shooting everything raw. But then as time was progressing, the Sharks actually were playing really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a couple years into it. And they ended up getting into, as you know, the Stanley Cup.
Mm-hmm.
And for hockey, this is like the World Cup, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was in this incredible position where I really didn't know much about hockey. I knew how it was a big deal. But like I was saying before, like I had this interesting perspective where it wasn't like hockey hadn't been coursing through my veins since I was tiny. So I was excited because I was like, man, this is going to be something for the resume, like to be like a photographer and I got these like, the cool photo passes, Stanley Cup, all the rest.
Yeah.
But I was, an interesting thing out of that was they needed, obviously like everyone needed those photos like the minute they were taken.
Yeah.
So there was no time to really like put my own spin.
Yeah.
It was like it had to be shot in JPEG because they couldn't open the raw files. Yeah. So I had to like color temperature had to be right, or had to be how I wanted people to see it. I had to all that kind of stuff had to. So that took you want to talk about knowing how to use your gear. That's like the next level. That's like you're saying getting it in camera.
Yeah.
Like whereas before, like I'd probably underexpose everything slightly and then just work with it in post. This was like I had to nail, it's got to be sharp. It's got to be, the color temperature's got to be what I want, because I literally would just hand those cards off to someone and just be like, hopefully you can use some of this. And then, so it was really, really fun. And actually, it was, the best part about that was I didn't have to do any of the editing. I would just shoot, and I'd be at the game, watching the game. The playoffs were incredible, but it was just like shooting, handing cards off at the end of the night or during. They dumped the cards and I would just go home. And that was like, it was like putting a 9 to 5. There was no editing. There was no, like, I didn't, so that was brilliant. So,
well, I want to ask you, what do you, as far as the process goes with photography, specifically, what is your favorite part of that? Because there's different parts to photography, right? There obviously there's shooting, there's the editing.
Mm-hmm.
There might be the, as you said, you like to get to a location before you start, then you absorb it and you start to kind of see. Basically what I'm getting at is like, I love to plan shoots.
Mm-hmm.
I love to film. I love to direct. I love all that stuff. The editing though, I mean, in a perfect world, and I'm just using an example, you would edit and I would stand over you, right, and then maybe get in there a couple times, we would work on it together. Okay. It wouldn't be just me. Okay. So is that kind of how you feel on certain things?
It's funny. I am not good at your part. I'm not good at I get, because 9 times out of 10, it's when you're, my photo style tends to be more photojournalistic. Okay. It's more like, it's more arriving at a place and then, I can look at it and I can be like, oh, it'd be interesting to shoot from here if something's going on here. But usually what I'm shooting, I can't anticipate it that much in advance. Mm-hmm. I don't know really where they're going to be doing stuff or where stuff's going to be set up or all the rest. So it's when I get there, looking at the light is more interesting to me, or where the light's where the sun's going to go, or where whatever, so for me, I get excited when I see that's going to be an amazing rim light, or that's going to be and then getting in those positions and taking those shots. It's kind of a blur a lot of times. I just I'm in there and I'm shooting, but in my head, I'll see an image. This has happened multiple times. I'll be like, that's going to make an amazing black and white high contrast image, or that's going to be, and I can kind of see the edit before I take the photo. And it doesn't happen all the time. Yeah. But there's some instances with obviously lens selection and stuff like that. It's key. Yeah. So just, again, it's knowing your gear. Have I said that before? So knowing your gear, but, like I said earlier, I hate sitting down and editing. There's a caveat to that though. Let's say I go out and I'll grab my camera, the light's amazing. We just moved to a new house, which is in the countryside, and it's beautiful. And
beautiful
the light,
home. Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
We love it up there, and it's got space for my boys to run around, these amazing trees covered in this green moss. And sometimes the light hits it and it makes this green, halo around these trees with the moss, backlighting it and stuff. So, I got to grab my camera immediately, this first thought, and I'll go and I'll take those photos. And usually it's like a spurt of like you get maybe 60 or 70 frames. And I know which ones in there that I'm probably going to want the most, and the rest are just throwaway. So getting those on the computer and opening them up is almost like Christmas morning sometimes.
Sure,
like,
sure.
Actually, if I hadn't been like editing all week, it's like those little, like it's like Christmas morning unwrapping. It's different with video because there's more to it, and I'm now realizing that after doing video for a couple of years. But like photo wise, it still captures. I still get that feeling sometimes. I'm like, oh, I wonder if, because it looked sharp on the back of my camera, but I wonder if it was like, I wonder if I nailed it.
Yeah.
And then getting
sure.
it in, knowing, man, it's a little softer. It's not, not post worthy. We're gonna talk about great whites in a bit, and that is something that I cherish my editing time for that. Like that's my like kind of relax. Like if I'm had a stressful week or even a stressful day, like I'll go into my office and I'll just open up one of the trips I've been on. And I mean, I take 7,000-8,000 photos in one of these trips.
Yeah.
So like, there's no way and the amount of time I'd have to dedicate to do the entire trip when I came home would just be like staggering. Yep. So I break it up, but it's amazing because I can just sit there, and sometimes I'll go in for hours and hours and hours in one image and just play with it, see different kind of, I like to get a bit artsy with it. But just putting my kind of look and feel and spin on stuff, just make sure the colors are all popping or doing what I want them to do. And that is, sometimes I'll be like, oh my God, where'd the 2 hours go? Just there,
right, well, because that's definitely for anybody that follows you, and then eventually when whoever's listening that does follow you, will realize that you by far, you put out a lot of shark content.
It's turned into that.
Yeah. Or your boys.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, so you can just tell what, what you really enjoy kind of getting on camera.
Yeah. And, Instagram is an interesting beast because, there's editing techniques that are way more successful on Instagram. You got to think about it. It's a tiny little screen, tiny little image. So high contrast. They say cooler images tend to attract more people. I don't subscribe to that. I usually, if anything, mine are warmer. There's, you can read a bunch of different things. There's tricks and all the rest of it, but like there's an interesting, it is true about the editing technique, and you got to think like, it's a small image, and it's usually a way smaller thumbnail that people are looking at if they're just exploring and finding you kind of thing. So you got to kind of edit with that in mind.
Yeah.
Whereas that edit isn't always the most, like in a gallery or hanging something big on your wall. Like you can have more detail and you can have subtle, these cameras they do such an incredible job with dynamic range now, like seeing these subtleties in the shadows and all the rest, where it gets completely lost. And that's why I was saying it's kind of a beast where I love Instagram. I love it. I love being able to, because it's such an easy platform for so many people to see your work so quickly. Which we've never really had before. You have Facebook and Twitter and stuff, but like this is like a place where people can come back and follow and constantly be, interacting and all that kind of stuff.
Well, Instagram has definitely overtaken Facebook. I think I know way more people that just have an Instagram and don't have a Facebook.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know the exact numbers, of course. I might be speaking out of turn, but I definitely think Instagram is by far the more popular platform. Yeah. Even maybe more so than Twitter, because I don't know a whole lot of people that have a Twitter account.
Right.
So I think you're looking at Instagram, Facebook, and then Twitter.
Yeah.
Maybe they're tied. But anyway, yeah. So to your point, I mean, I think your biggest audience, especially for what you do, is going to be on Instagram.
Yep. Yeah. So it's been great lately. It's been really good. So but it's like I was saying, it kind of, I have to kind of, some of my images I have to be like, well, this is strictly for Instagram, because I'm like, I would edit this completely different if it was going for printers, if we're going to blow it up. So anyway, I can't remember where we were. We were talking about.
Yeah. So talk about, so you worked for the Sharks, and that, the work that you've done for them was phenomenal. The stuff that the few things that I was able to see you share was great. And how did that parlay into
okay
real Sharks?
Okay. So, Okay, so I was doing shot the Stanley Cup, and I had some crazy experiences doing that because they have, let alone like they have crazy people coming and open the doors and stuff, like for when the players come out during playoffs and all the rest. So like met some really incredible people that way. And so my role there, like I was saying, was just to capture behind the scenes stuff, so fan interactions, player interactions with fans, warm ups and stuff, and so I had a really good time doing that. So Sharks, unfortunately, I've got actually a funny story about Stanley Cup itself. It was the last game. The Penguins were back. They were here.
I was at that game.
Yeah. So the final buzzer goes. Sharks lose. Everyone's coming into the locker room. I'm standing where the players come in through the tunnel. And, obviously they're not happy. But like, it was really tragic because like all the family was there and like, the wives are crying, the kids are crying. And I was like, man, I don't want to take photos of this. Like,
sure.
No one wants to see this.
Yeah.
Doug Wilson walked past me and like, I just gave him a nod and they hadn't asked me to sit there and take photos of it, but like, I felt like I took like 2 or 3 frames and I was just like, I just felt wrong. I know they probably wanted me there to take more, but I was like, there was a video guy there, but I was like, I'm going to go off and I'll find something else to photograph. So these passes they had given me. So like, Stanley Cup is like for a sports photographer, it's like the Olympics, or it's like, it's these, they're the security's through the roof, and they don't just give these things out to anyone. There's Associated Press and like Sports Illustrated and people like that walking around with them. And but there's only certain areas those guys can go. But because I was Shark staff, my pass got me anywhere. Yeah. So the game had ended, and I was like, well, they were still obviously like the Penguins were out on the ice and they're about to get the trophy and stuff. And I was like, I'm going to walk around, see if I can find some other stuff. So from where the locker room was underneath the stadium, you can walk all the way around to where they keep the Zamboni, and it's where the players come in the back over there. Yeah. So I was like, I'll head that way. So I'm walking, and I come around the corner where the Zamboni is usually parked, and there's like there can see like in front of me. There's like, if you go left down this little tunnel, it's literally where they drive out onto the ice, and like there's the spare goals and stuff right there, and in front of me, there's a wall of photographers, and there's literally like security guards like holding me back, but I'm coming up to, so I see the security guards back and all the photographers in front of me looking at me and like literally jostling. I'm like, there's something happening. So I was like, this is weird. And so, but I can't see because I'm walking, I'm coming through these double doors. They're maybe 30 or 40 feet in front of me, getting held back. And I was like, what is happening? And right as they do that, like this flash, and it was this reflection of the Stanley Cup, literally 4 feet in front of me, and the 2 guys with the white gloves holding it, like turning, and they'd just taken it out of the case. So these guys were trying to take photos of that happening, and I was literally the only photographer. I think I sent it to you. It's I'll put it on the it's one of the frames, and it's these 2. It's not a great photo, but you can't see all the photographers in the back, but you see people being held back, and I was just like, this is. It was a good lesson to just like keep your head on a swivel. Yeah. Go find some images somewhere. This was like, I didn't want to take photos of the guys because by that time I was a couple years into it, and I knew all the players. I knew what this meant to them, and obviously to San Jose and all the rest of it. So, but I was just
it was
like
heartbreaking for a fan. I couldn't imagine as a player. And like then the families and all that, I was just like, man, I don't personally just don't want to stand here because like this is very personal. Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
So, but I made the right decision. I walked off, and that happened, and I was just like, I just immediately just stuck my camera in front of my face, and I just started just taking frames, and they came right at me, and then turned, and then they went down on the ice. And I have this other frame. I don't know if I sent it to you, but it was of. It kind of summed up the night really well because it's from back in that tunnel, and who's the dude with the horrible beard on the Penguins, their like best player that everyone always what's his name? Anyway,
there's a few. Well, there's Crosby.
Crosby. Yeah. He's got the trophy above his head, but it's all you can see is his arms holding the trophy above his head, and then you see like they have these machines that shoot out the confetti and stuff to my left, but it's like silhouetted by the entrance to the door. So it's all black. Most of the frame's black, but it's just like silhouetted him holding up the trophy. And it just kind of like, it's depressing. It's a depressing image.
Yeah.
It like shows like the heartbreak of losing it at home kind of thing, especially the Stanley Cup. Like,
sure.
But I wouldn't have got any of that if I'd stayed where I was kind of thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that happened. And then, season ended and I went into the next season kind of still doing behind the scenes stuff and all the rest. Mm-hmm. But, the Sharks had kind of, they'd gained a lot of popularity because of
making it that far
for
the first time ever.
New injection of money and all the rest. So they started putting some more money and stuff behind their marketing and all the rest. Mm-hmm. And so they had this really interesting campaign, like We'll Cheer for You. Mm-hmm. Where they had like two players and they'd put them in an interesting scene where they'd be cheering for the fans mm-hmm. instead of, vice versa. And so they had one at like a pool and they were cheering on the lifeguard. Yeah. And they had another one. It was like I think a music recital. And then the last one I think they did, and arguably people say is the most successful one, is this one with Thornton and Burns in a barber shop, mm-hmm. and it's a dude getting his beard cut. And so I'd actually heard what they were doing, and I was like, oh, that's really funny. And their head of marketing guy's like, yeah, you got a nice beard. Do you want to be in the commercial? I was like, I thought maybe like walking around in the background or something like that. He's like, well, we need a guy to sit in the seat and then get his beard trimmed. And I was just like, okay, sure. So that was a really surreal day because I just sat in this barber chair and the dude who's actually cutting my beard is a really nice guy. He used to cut Burns' beard like for real. And I think a lot of the other players who'd go and be their barber.
Yeah, I think
he's a shop in Danville now. It just opened.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What's it called?
I don't know. I just saw on Instagram recently. We'll look it up after. It recently just opened.
Yeah, because I think Johnny Root. The in-game host. Yep. He had I think he saw him and he did a post, or maybe it was Brody Brazil. I can't remember, but one of those guys made a comment about him and said all the guys' beards and hair that he cuts and all that type of stuff. And so. And I was like scrolling through looking for like cat memes or something like that. Right. So I didn't stop, but yeah. I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Nice dude. So they're like, yeah, we need a guy with a big beard to get trimmed. So I'm like, okay, I'm down. So yeah, like I was saying, it was a weird day. It was really fun, but I just sat in this barber chair for what seemed like hours. I think it actually was in the end. It was a couple hours, and those two Neanderthals just sat behind me yelling insults at the back of my head for, nice, but it was really funny. And the outtakes are amazing. If you haven't seen those, you should just look up Thornton and Burns outtakes from their commercials. They're great. So it was really hard not to.
We'll post a link to that too. Cool. Yeah,
it's really hard not to laugh when they're doing that too. Sure. So no, that was great. And so I was provided like these incredible, and that's what I was saying earlier, like these opportunities that stuff comes your way for everyone. Like mm-hmm. opportunities happen, and some people just don't think it's worth putting the effort in to make sure it's successful or whatnot. Not everyone, but like some. It's just I really think that I can contribute. The success I've had in actually like realizing this is a good opportunity and really trying to, knock it out of the park, any opportunity I get like that. So,
yeah, real quick. I mean, I'm glad that you said that because I do think, it's important that people kind of realize those moments. And sometimes it's hard, especially when you're younger, you don't kind of realize that. Like on a really quick side note, I was doing stand up when I was living in LA, like, 2003-ish to about 2006 or 7. I had performed at Tommy T's in Pleasanton, and I invited some friends and family, and it was like a showcase night, and I never really believed I was that funny. I kind of knew that I didn't really know myself at that time. I was in my mid-20s, you know, And but I was getting really good feedback, and so I was like, you know what, I'm hoping that the more I do this, the more I'll find a voice, and I'll really actually have an act and put it together and all that. And from that night, because of the way I was received, and again, this is with family and friends in the audience, it wasn't all family and friends, but it was a lot. Tommy gave me a really great opportunity to open for Bobby Slayton.
Cool.
Who's for people that go to a lot of comedy shows.
Yeah.
And he's a legend. And so I got a chance to open for him, and I didn't know I didn't know how to open for I didn't know how to do any of that stuff, and I also didn't really prepare.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that was when I really. I'd already gone through some moments where I had some really, great nights and some really terrible nights, but that was a really big eye opener for me because I wasn't prepared, and I got a really huge opportunity. And that's part of because I stopped doing stand-up probably about a couple months later. And I realized, fortunately I was mature enough at the time to realize that I took an opportunity away from somebody who really wanted that. And I wasn't, I think I knew at that point that I love stand-up, I love comedy, but this isn't what I want to do.
No, that's a very important distinction.
Yeah, exactly.
And like that's we take people just think these opportunities are just like, oh, this is just something I should be afforded, and I should, and it's not. It's like you were saying, like these people. I mean, that's why, like the Stanley Cup, I didn't take it lightly that I was getting to do this. Like I had people coming out of the woodwork that I barely knew. Just like, do you understand? Like, do you understand? And I'm like, not really, but I'm starting to put that picture together, and I'm starting to appreciate the full, extent of what's happening here. So, but I mean, it's photography. As a photographer, you get these opportunities where you get to go places and do things that people usually, but at the same time, like, man, you got to be good at what you're doing, and you got to put the time and effort into knowing your gear, but like honing your own look and feel, and separating yourself from the pack, because. Like we were saying earlier, where like cameras are getting cheaper and gear's more accessible. There's more and more people in the world wanting to do what we do. And I don't feel, a lot of photographers have this weird, funny niche thing that they like to do. They don't like to tell people their process. They don't like to share what gear they use. They don't want to, and I think that is crazy, because like, the more you shut the door in people's faces, like the less innovation you're going to have in your craft, the less like, more people learning how to do and getting excited about photography only drives the industry further.
Right.
So it's like, and like, if you're that scared that someone's going to take your job, like, dude, you better double down and really get better at what you're doing, because you're going to get left in the dust either way.
Right.
You're only as good as the last photo you've taken. So like and I constantly think about that. I've got to like, the minute you rest on your laurels, you're going to get passed up. Like, stuff is constantly advancing around you. And unfortunately with digital photography, you got to stay on top of like the new stuff coming out. And, people always go like, do you really need a new camera? It's like, the camera isn't everything. Right. But it is a big part of it. And like being able to shoot in areas and get cleaner images than you have, a year prior, even it's that fastly evolving, is important in some instances.
Well, yeah. And well, you're coming from an abundance mindset. And that's actually what my last, Gina, what we talked about yesterday, in regards to the abundance mindset and sharing, right, and giving back to the craft and giving back to the community. Yeah. And not just like the legit community you live in, but the photography community, the real estate community, the video community, the film community, whatever you want to call it. And that is a trait, I think, in successful people, because it's what you can do. Yeah. And you're comfortable with where you're at, and you see that there is opportunities everywhere. Yeah. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people who don't work that way, especially, I mean, you want to see a toxic environment, look at the comment sections on anything, on anything, especially nowadays, but like filmmakers in general are so territorial, and they're very, and photographers too. Yeah. And, So anyway, so I mean, I think it's great that you look at it that way, because you can grow as a photographer when you network with other people who might be not at your level, or they might be above you, but it's a constant circle of everybody teaching.
It's constant learning for everyone involved. It's not, I mean, I am not saying in the slightest that I have like reached the maximum knowledge. I am nowhere close to it, but I love teaching.
Yeah.
So I love, and I take a lot out of that, like being able to, articulate how to use a camera to someone who has a desire to use it but gets really frustrated, and finding out ways to explain the simple mechanics of a camera, and watching it click in someone's head is incredible. And it's like for anyone teaching anyone anything, like when you can depart your knowledge and then you see like a light switch go, because you know how much joy that brings you in doing what you do, and you're just like, man, I can see that you're frustrated, but I can also see that you're really excited to get into this and to learn stuff. And when you finally, and then it's fun watching them, like then it snowballs, and then if they're really interested in it, because some people like, oh, that's cool, and then on to the next thing. But like some people catch that bug, and it's just like, and then you start doing what I did, and you just start checking them off, getting, how do I do this? What does that do? What happens if I do this? What does that lens look like? What,
Yeah.
And unfortunately, photography, as or videography, any of that, it's expensive.
Yeah,
like the hobby itself is expensive. And so and it doesn't have to be, but like as you go further, you start building your lens collection or whatever it is, stuff. It costs money, but if you're doing it right, it's going to pay for itself, kind of thing. So
yeah. So you, no, it's a great point, because it is a very expensive business hobby. I mean, it is expensive to keep your gear clean, and you do sometimes have to upgrade in certain areas, and that can get really expensive, just depending on what it is. So.
Yeah, you get what you pay for as well. That's another word of wisdom to like people who, when you look at stuff, there's reasons it costs that. There's reasons, and you do not have to go and buy a $10,000 setup to take a good photo.
Nope. You
can go and get a $100 point and shoot at Best Buy right now and take incredible photos with it. So it's like that, and make big prints and all that kind of good stuff. Yeah. Like, there's obviously there's pros and cons to all this stuff, size or, weight and sharpness and all the rest. So like you can get out there and just, the best camera is the one you have on you at the time. So, I have my weapons of choice, but like sometimes, man, like the iPhone is just there and the light's right. And if I go inside and get that camera, the light's going to be gone.
Right.
So it's like, hey, I just learned that app, the camera app. There's so many things on that camera app that people just don't, like if you hold your finger down, you can lock focus and you can control exposure, and there's so many little things, but people don't want to take the time to learn how to do that. So it's like, there's always, in anything in life, if you're not going to take a moment to like, if you want to be really good at something, like, are you fooling yourself? Do you really want to be good at that? Or do you want to just, say you're a photographer kind of thing? So,
yeah, well, yeah, I mean, like you said, you have to strike when the time is right, kind of like when you're drinking coffee in your kitchen and then you see that it's raining and you're like, I got to go get my gear.
And burn your tongue.
Yeah, exactly. For those that don't know what we're talking about, where Euan, like I said earlier, Euan was in a spec commercial that myself and my mentor, Eric, we put together a couple weeks ago. And we kept making you drink coffee. And
that was wired.
Yeah, that was your whole scene, was that you were at home and you're checking out the morning, and you're like, man, it's raining, but I got to go out and shoot, and it's part of being creative. And when the time strikes, you gotta go.
Those photos don't take themselves, man. So
no,
like it's that's like, I used to drive around, like I was saying earlier, with my camera in my car, just like hoping that, not hoping, but just like anything I see, I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And I do it so much now that I've got two little boys, and my oldest, who just turned 6, he will literally be like we saw a rainbow a couple weekends ago. And it was incredible. I mean, it was the brightest rainbow I'd ever seen. It was like really low to the ground. It was crazy. And he was like, Dad, stop the car and get out and take a photo of that. Like, he's like, he knows, he demands it now. Yeah. So it's you just, sometimes I'm obsessed with capturing, well, life around me and all the rest, but like I was saying, light. And so like that definitely spoke to me when I saw that too.
Yeah, very cool. So so, so anything else as far as that you experienced with the sharks, and or did that immediately parlay into filming or shooting great whites, or
Yeah.
how did that happen?
Okay, so the great whites are, if anyone follows me or sees my stuff, they usually know me as the great white, not San Jose shark photographer.
Yeah.
Okay, so great whites, I've had a love affair with these animals. Kind of actually any like big apex predators, but like sharks in general. I have a hawk on my arm and stuff, and well, obviously I'm covered in sharks.
Yeah.
But sharks in general I've just been fascinated, and probably by the Hollywood version of a shark, which it didn't scare me as much as just like, I'm like, oh my God, that's a real thing. Like that's not a Hollywood prop. Like that animals really look like that, teeth out and all the rest, and extended jaws. And what 90% of people, when they think of great whites, they think of these, crazy creatures. So I had done some research into like what is it, like where can I go and see them, and like what does that entail? Like what, so it was like, about 15 years ago now. About 15 years ago. We just about to get married, and I saw these like incredible black and white photos of white sharks, and I tell the story to people, whoever asks me, and I really wish I knew this guy's name, but he was like I think he was like a Danish or Scandinavian photographer, and just really, this is probably a good time to tell people that like I'm not a marine biologist, I'm not a scientist, I'm an artist.
Yeah.
So coming at this is like purely from just like I'm wanting to create art with sharks and wanting to photograph, and along the process I've learned a lot about sharks. And I'm not an expert. I'm not like, I do my best for conservation. Like I try and like I'm actually heavier into that now than I was before, and I donate a lot of images for those guys to use, and so there's that whole angle of it. But I'm not a specialist.
Yeah, sure.
So I was just purely looking at it from an artistic point of view, going like, God, these are, and I was heavy into like my love affair with photography at the time. By that point, so I was like, God, these are cool. Like so I found out, it was on a photo blog I used to look at all the time, and I saw the dude's name and put it in Google and found his page, and he was from what it looked like, a pretty well-established photographer. And so I was like, I'll shoot him an email on his website, and like, he probably won't get back to me. Like, that's cool, I get it, but I'm like, I have to ask. Like, I'm like, so it's like, hey, love your photos are incredible. Like, where did you take these? And some other things, I can't remember what else I said, but that was the gist of it, just like incredible work. And where did you do this? And like 10 minutes later, I get this email back from him, and it was just like, I must have just caught him at the right time. And he was like, yo, yeah, this is a place. It's Guadalupe Island. And this is the boat. It was a Solmar. And then this is the guy you need to go with, this guy named Dean Carr, who leads these expeditions out there. So I was like, okay, cool. And he's like, here's Dean's number. Give him a ring. Super nice dude. So I was like, okay. So I Googled Dean before, it was like, I Googled Dean before I called him up, and I just pages and pages, Dean Carr. I'm like, whoa, but it was all like this, like movie, like he's a producer. So he's this incredible music video producer down in LA. And he's made, if you saw a style, then you could be like, oh, that looks a lot like, and then you'd find like, oh, he did that. And he did that. He did like all Three Doors Down, music videos, Dave Matthews Band, like the video with the talking head in the bayou, like that was all his idea. Wow. Marilyn Manson, Redman, like the list goes on and on. Incredible. Like this dude, Perfect Circle, like any kind of like 90s era rock. This dude is heavily influential. And then like behind the scenes, but like, I don't know why, like he should be like everyone should know about Dean. Dude's a rock star. So I called him up, and he answered the phone, and so it's like, oh, hi, I was told to contact you about, and he's like, yeah, man. Like, and Dean's got this like cool voice, and he's like, yeah, brother, like, yeah, we're just, we go out and see these cool shows. I'm like, oh, this sounds incredible. And he's like, yeah, and they're like big mouths and breach. And I'm like, yeah. And so we got on to like what it costs, and I was just like, whoa. And at the time, like I was getting married, we were buying our first house, and it was just like the, all these barriers, right? And like, you want to talk about waterproofing your camera, like gets expensive.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh man, like, well, I can't now, but I'm going to. And we were talking about this earlier when people go like, that's on my bucket list. I'm like, I knew I was going to do it. It was just a matter of time. I had to find ways of paying for stuff.
Sure.
But all the time I get people like, oh, I'd love to do that. And yeah, I'll go, yeah, I'm nice about it. I'm like, yeah, cool. Well, if you're ever serious about it, let me know and I'll connect you with the right people, kind of thing. But it's like so many people just go like, oh, I really, really want to do that. But this, and this. And then that's the end of the conversation. There's no but this, and this, but I'm going to find a way around it. It's just like, that's that. Like I'm not doing any more. Like I won't find a way. This doesn't, like, that's a staggering amount of money, but it's just like, yeah, it's a lot of money, but like you can't take it with you. No. Like, and not to be reckless, but it's just like, if it's something that is like, that is in you that you need to do, why would you not do it? Like, why would you be left later on going like, man, I really wish I had gone and seen them. Like, I wish I had, those woulda, couldas. So anyway, I obviously started following Dean and keeping up with him, like on Facebook, and just seeing all the cool stuff he was doing on these trips, and like year after year, him posting like every year, and he would contact me like, you want to come? Are you ready? And so like I found a way to get my housing sponsored. I found ways of paying for like the wetsuit and all that kind of good stuff. And so I got it all down to I got it down to paying for the trip itself. And I can't remember what the combination was. I think it was actually the Stanley Cup happened. So like I was saying earlier, like I was shooting all those games. And no, it was the year before, because the Stanley Cup was after. It was the year before. I was shooting a bunch of games for him, but I kind of forgotten about it. And I got a check in the mail because I had my other job and all the other stuff. So it's just like, I was just having fun, like shooting the games and all that. But like I put in, and then I got sent this check, and I was like, I think right then too. So like a month before that, like it'd been time to pay for the trip. And I was like, I don't know if I can do it this year, but like, I really want to do it. And my grandparents, my grandma at the time had passed away, and she left me a chunk of money. And so I was just like, well, that's a pretty good excuse. But also I had student loans like sitting there, and I was just like, so I did the responsible thing, and I paid the student loans off really against everything in my body. Like I was like, I just don't want to like, I just want to like, I'll keep making the payment. Let me just go on the shark trip. And, so I was like, no, I'll do the responsible thing. So I paid it off. And that's a little side note on that. That's, if anyone's ever like made the last payment on their student loan, or like like a car or something like that, when you click that button to pay that thing off, like confetti should shoot out of your computer, or like something should happen. It's so underwhelming. You're like, just like, especially if it's a lump sum payoff, you're like, click. And then more annoyingly, it said like I owed 11 cents, and it wouldn't go off the screen. Like no matter what I would do, it just wouldn't go away.
You're over it. You're just done.
Oh God. So anyway, so I had done that, and I kind of felt bad, and I think I had to tell him that I was like, I can't do it again this year, blah, blah, blah. And then I got that check in the mail from the Sharks out of the blue, and I was just like, I think I opened the thing, and I was just like, yo, I'm coming. And so I did it. So that year was a great year, a little life-changing for me. Got in face-to-face with these. Well, first off, Guadalupe, there's two places in the world where the biggest pregnant females show up. It's Seal Island, South Africa, down there, and it's this island of Guadalupe, and the reason these big sharks show up there is because it's covered in seals. There's elephant fur and California seals in Guadalupe, and I think there's fur seals and another species that's down there in South Africa. So these sharks come and just have a little buffet and then go off and do their thing. So they don't know where they have their babies, or even where they mate. They've kind of like a rough idea in the Pacific Ocean out here where they see where they've had transponders and they kind of mill around this one spot.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the ocean's not really a small place, so it's little thing on a map looks small until you get there and it's like 70 miles this way by 90 miles that way. So it's they just think it's somewhere around there because they tend to go there, and the biggest ones are spotted around there. And then recently everyone was freaking out about Deep Blue, who's over in Hawaii, which was kind of cool because we thought that shark was dead. It was unspoken, but like the last time that she was seen was Guadalupe in 2012. So everyone hadn't seen her since then, and so like, well, it's kind of a big shark. You'd think she'd be seen somewhere.
See her,
So, sorry, that was another side note, but
well, real quick, I think those are the two constants for Shark Week. Where do sharks mate and have babies?
Yeah.
And then also, is Megalodon extinct?
Oh God,
I know.
The Meg.
I'm so tired of that conversation.
Well, that's usually the first question. Everyone's like, "Have you seen that big shark? That one that's like Deep Blue?" No, I wish I had, but I haven't. Like, and one of my good friends, she's crazier about sharks than I am, Nikki. Savvy, I'll give you her Instagram too. You should definitely check her stuff out. She's incredible. And then this guy named George Prost, who's I like to photograph sharks. He's I'm sure everyone follows him who's shark crazy already, but
I know Nikki and follow. Yeah, she's great. And she's actually really for those that actually make the commitment to go. She's a really great resource, and she's been really cool to talk to.
So I went on this trip with Dean, and I met Nikki and a bunch of other really amazing shark people on this trip. And I quickly found that it was something I was going to be doing a lot more, kind of thing. It's like, and I think that's pretty common on these trips. It's either like, oh yeah, check that off the list, or it's like, oh no, I want to go not only once, like I want to go as many times as I can in a year, kind of thing. Like, not only was it my first time with these amazing animals, it was also my first time shooting underwater. Yeah. Like I'd use like a GoPro underwater and stuff. Not to knock GoPros, they're great. I still use them, but they're not the same as using a DSLR under the water. And I had the housing I got. I use an Aquatech housing. I'm a Nikon guy, so I was using an 810 under the water. Incredible camera and great housing, really good housing, but it's a surf housing. It's not a dive housing. So the difference between the two is surf housings are made to be absolutely battered, like go into a wave and just like be thrown against reefs and all the rest. And they're built like tanks, and they're great, but they're limiting. You can't get to the aperture. I can't get to my aperture dial in the front. I can only manipulate the controls on the back of the camera. It's hard to see through the even like the 810, like full frame Nikon cameras have a nice wide range, like they're a nice viewfinder. It's nice and big, but if you think about it, your viewfinder is in the camera, and then you have a little space, and then there's a piece of acrylic that's about an inch, and then you're wearing a mask, so that sets it off another maybe 1.5 inches. So like you're that far off. So if you take your camera and you hold it up, that nice viewfinder is now like that
super small.
So like I quickly found that like focus and all that is very tough. So people always ask like, what kind of lens do you shoot with? What do you use down there? And thankfully cameras nowadays have incredible resolution. So I was tending to, and I still do, shoot pretty wide and then just work on the crop afterwards. You lose all the compression, and there's things. So I've now started experimenting using a zoom, and it's just relying on that. So a lot of other people will. I read a ton about what other photographers do, and then I kind of like tried to do that, and for my style it didn't really work. So I remember the first day in the water shooting, and then downloading all my images, and then I tried to use the zoom the first day just because I'm like, and just missing like 90%, and being furious.
I'm sure.
Like, I remember people around me just being like, oh, it's okay. I'm like, no, you don't understand.
Yeah.
This isn't okay. This is the reason I'm here.
Yeah.
And I didn't say that. I just went, yeah, that's cool. I'll get them tomorrow. And just remembering just like wanting to break my computer over my knee, just like,
Sure.
and then just being frustrated because, and that's the worst thing you can do as a photographer. Like, and so I had to take a minute, calm down, talk to a couple people who are very experienced, Matt and Nikki and all those guys on the boat, and just be like, yo, this is what's happening. What the hell? And they're like, yeah, I told you should shoot wide. You're like, and so I'm like, okay. So like the next day, got in the water, shot with a, I think 18 mil, and nice and wide. I mean, and that's the cool thing about Guadalupe is they come so close to you that like they're right there, filling the frame, all the rest of it. So I had a much better experience from then on. So then, so just a little bit about just being in the water with them.
Yeah.
So I remember even that first day, obviously the first time you got your suit on, they put this weight vest on you, hook your hookah line up, so you're getting all your air, got your camera, you've been fiddling with your camera all morning. It's all in how you're excited. There's already sharks in the water. On Solmar, which is the best boat. You go to the back and there's two platforms that come off the side, and that's where the shark wranglers stay. And, they're incredible. Like the whole crew on the Solmar is absolutely incredible. No matter who's wrangling. Luis usually is on the side I like to go in on, and that dude is just, I mean, if you mention that dude's name to anyone, they're like, oh yeah, he's like the bee's knees. That guy knows what he's doing. And they're so good on that boat that they'll keep so they're called shark wranglers. So their job is to keep the sharks at bay, pretty much hanging out with us at the surface, keeping them excited and interested in what's going on. They're already pretty interested in what's going on in the cage. Cages are clanging, and there's like shiny things, and they're like, what's going on over here?
Yeah.
But then we have these huge chunks of tuna. So they get these yellowfin tuna, and they take a saw and they cut them up into big chunks, and they put a rope through them, and they throw them in the water. So they bait them in with these pieces of tuna, and they're not supposed to let the sharks get the tuna. But obviously sharks are awesome and they find ways around that, So what they do though is they'll come up and they have these buoys. So it like kind of floats and bobs at the top. The shark will come in, he'll look at it, and he might make a move for it. And then at the last minute, the wrangler kind of pulls it away. And if the wrangler's good, he won't pull it all the way in. He'll just kind of give it a nudge, just enough to send the shark past it, kind of like a matador with a bull.
Yeah. And
the shark will then spin around like on a dime, like whoosh, and then come right back at it. And when they come back at it, or they'll do these series of, they kind of like figure eights right next to you, like me to you, even closer than that sometimes. So it's, and he will march it in. He'll just be slowly reeling it in. And the shark will just be doing it. And sometimes, and then he'll get to the end, he'll grab it and throw it back out, and the shark will just stay there. Like, it's not rare for a shark to hang out for a couple minutes just doing these incredible, like,
these big loops
and you're just like, you're 10 feet on, you're right neck, you're eye to eye with this thing, this massive, sometimes up to 20 feet shark that's as big around as a Volkswagen, just like going after these pieces of meat. So it's like, people are like, aren't you scared? And I mean, call me a weirdo. I've been obsessed with them for, as long as I can remember. And it's not, so the cage opens and it makes this like clang, and then you're standing there and the water's kind of cold, and you start like going down the ladder into the cage, and then you drop all the way down to the bottom. And there's a moment where you're like, what am I doing? What is happening? And that quickly completely evaporates once you realize that like they're literally not there for you. They could care less. Like they're interested, just like, what are you doing? But they're not there for you. They're there for these giant chunks of tuna, and they're like 90% of the time, I'd say 95% of the time, white sharks are super aerodynamic. They're energy conserving. They're usually really low, swimming really slow. They're all muscle, right? If you look straight down on top of a shark, it's got this really incredible profile where it's just like this pointy, nice aerodynamic, and then it comes to this like really quick, abrupt taper at the end. There's these massive, massive muscles they have on the left or right of their tail, and their tails are huge. So they use that to their advantage, obviously. When they see a piece of food or something they want to attack, they take 2 swipes of this massive tail, and dude, talk about displacement. They're just like off to the races. And I have on my YouTube, I have a video of a shark just mind his own business, and then he saw the bait and he just took off, and the turn of pace is like, it's incredible, absolutely incredible.
So what you're saying is they have the torque of a Tesla.
Yeah. Yeah, like 2 Teslas. So, but that was a real eye opener to me, because we were talking earlier, like, obviously Jaws and movies like that. I mean, Jaws is incredible. It's one of my favorite films by
Mine
far.
too, yeah.
But it's a very unrealistic view of sharks, which is, Jaws kind of gets a pass just because I think it did while it did start like the craze and and unfortunately killed a lot of sharks, it also got a lot of people very excited about sharks.
Mm-hmm. Me included.
So and there's this fine line with that. Like we were talking earlier about Euan Rannachan, and she's incredible. I mean, the amount of so recently we had Deep Blue just resurfaced again in Hawaii, which threw everyone for a loop, because the last time she was spotted was Guadalupe, and they were thinking maybe she's a Guadalupe shark. They have like these white sharks tend to, like the California ones, tend to stay up near the Farallones. They don't tend to mix down with us or go to Hawaii. So the fact that she's now been spotted in Hawaii, people used to think she was a Guadalupe shark. They're thinking maybe she just hangs out near Hawaii now. And everyone was really excited because they thought she probably wasn't alive anymore. We hadn't seen her since 2012. Yeah. There's been no other spotting, a shark that size. There's other sharks we see year after year in Mexico. So the fact that we hadn't seen her was a little bit discouraging. So anyway, there's the video recently of Euan Rannachan going out there and doing her thing. We're grabbing hold of the fin and going for a ride. And, people got outraged and really upset about it. And yeah, touching sharks, not a great idea. She does it almost every single day. She knows these animals in and out. She knows when's a good time, when's not a good time. But even more than that, the amount of conservation that woman does for these animals and awareness she brings to them and good, the good that she does far outweighs, what she's doing. That being said, don't touch sharks because you don't know what you're doing. Yeah. Like you don't know what that shark's like. Sharks have these, amazing receptors that go down their body. And if you catch them off guard and you just go out and stick your hand out and grab a shark, how would you like to be walking down the street and someone just reach out and grab the back of your head, So people, that's I think mainly the reason a lot of people got bent out of shape about it. It's just because like you don't want people just jumping in the water, grabbing these sharks, one, not knowing what's going on, spin around like a dog or something like that doesn't know what's going on.
That's a great analogy.
And giving you a nip, because then it's just going to be open season on sharks again. And it's like, that's not, when you're around them, you're in their habitat. That's their house. That's where they're quite happy to let you hang out too. But it's like, come on, don't be dumb. So it's one of those things. So to me, I've had multiple people on Instagram ask me like, what do you think about it? I'm like, guys, the amount of good that woman does for these animals and the ocean in general, like far outweighs whatever she does, here. She obviously does that to gain the audience to be able to promote, conservation and all the rest. So, you got that. So that was my like first initial interaction with sharks and just kind of absorbing and being around them. And then, like I said, the first day of shooting was just a massive failure. But luckily that's the good thing about those trips is you get a couple days to mess around. You
get a couple more shots at it. Yeah.
Yeah. So did that. And then I was just hooked.
Well, yeah, it's, I'm glad that you brought, you just brought up, for me, and I think you feel the same way. It's, obviously there's always a fear of the unknown. Yeah. Right. Like, would I want to be 30 feet out in Santa Cruz or Bodega Bay? Right. Just swimming. Yeah, no, I wouldn't want to be. Yeah. And it's not because what do they say? You have a better chance of getting struck by lightning than being attacked by a shark. But it's that fear of the unknown. Yeah. Almost, like we were joking about when you're a kid and you're in a pool and you're just like, there's no way there's a shark in here, but there's like a 1% chance there might be, Yeah. So I don't know that it's fear, but it's a respect. Yeah. it's a respect for, this is a machine that's millions of years of evolution in the making, and it has instincts. It doesn't want you. It's said over and over and over again that anytime a human is bit by a shark, it's a case of mistaken identity.
Yep.
That's why I noticed that Ocean Ramsey was wearing. They have those new suits now where they're not black. They have patterns on them that
trying to differentiate themselves from.
Yeah, they confuse the shark, so it's like they don't see you. Yep. Because we had talked about this before. I think when we filmed the commercial, but what a lot of people don't know is sharks hang out at the bottom, right, and they look up almost, right. And so, if you're on a surfboard, or you're swimming, you look and they can sense you through all the electrodes or whatever in the water, and they can sense you, and then they can see you, but they don't. All they see is a silhouette.
Big elephant seal up there.
Yeah,
especially with me in the water. I'd look, if I'm in a wetsuit, I look like a giant elephant seal.
Well, and so they shoot up, like you said. They whip their tail a few times. They shoot up. They take a bite, and they go, "This isn't what." Yeah.
Whoops.
This isn't what I eat. Yeah. And then, but it's, they don't eat you. They don't swallow you whole. The problem is that for sorry to be graphic, but that bite is pretty devastating, and you most likely won't make it. And so, but anyway, so the point of that is that they're not there. They don't hunt you. They don't want to eat you. It's a case of mistaken identity. And so it is about knowing your space. That's what she does. She knows how to approach them. She knows how they act. She knows what body language is what you want to avoid. So I think it's important you kind of make that that distinction. Yeah.
And that just comes from years and years of being around those sharks and knowing, the ins and outs. Yeah. So, so I did that one. And then the next year, I came home from that trip, and I kind of got, like, some of my images did pretty well. And I started but I remember, I remember one of the really, and you'll find this when you go on your trip too, there's this really frustrating thing that happens when you come back from an experience like this, and where you try and explain it to anyone, and there's no words, like the photos don't do it justice, the videos don't do it justice. Just being cut off from, like, civilization is so tough to do these days, and you're completely isolated on this. You stay on the boat for 4 days. It's such a incredible recharge, like, and just, I can't say enough good things about the time that you spend on that boat. But, like, it's so, I remember the first, because Nikki, she's like, it's going to be very tough for you to explain this to anyone. And I was like, I'll show them the pictures and all that. And I remember getting on the plane, and this dude was like, and we were in San Diego. No, I think it was in LAX. It was it was LAX. And the guy's like, so, like, we're making small talk. He's sitting next to me. He's like, so what have you been up to? And I was just like, and I was like, I was going to say, like, I think I said, I was like, I just went diving with white sharks. And the dude just looked at me like I was absolutely nuts. And I was just like, he's like, okay. And then, like, he just changed the subject immediately. He's like, I went to Disneyland. And I was just like, yep.
Yeah.
Okay, like, there's no, I can't. And then, like, I think he had one more question about sharks, and then that was that. And it's like, some people aren't interested in sharks. I get that, but it's like, it's so hard to put into words. Like, and so that's why I'm stoked for you to be able to, you've liked it for so long that you're actually going to get to go. And because it's like, and it doesn't have to be sharks. It could be anything. But like, when you're really passionate about something, or you like, you have this image built up in your mind, I think it's really important, especially, like, you get one go on this little pebble, and it's just like, if you don't make the most of it, like, if some people are fine, the 9 to 5 and just going on, and that's totally cool. Like, if that's fulfilling and that's what they can get, then I respect that. But to me, like, I can't, and that doesn't make me special. There's lots of other people just like me, but to me, like, I keep saying, like, constantly itch that creative thing, or like, to experience things that I'm like, man, that'd be really cool. And then, like, I'm not, like I said, I'm not a marine biologist. I'm not a scientist. Like, I'm not nothing special to be able to go and do these. I just found, I just researched and saw there's ways of doing it.
Yeah.
And people get really shocked about that all the time. Like, can you just do this? I'm like,
yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
And you can go on expeditions to Antarctica if you want. You can, which is my next, I really want to photograph polar bears. That's my next like big thing.
Oh yeah. That'd be really cool.
That's like, that's my last couple of years. That's been my new thing. But, I mean, the sharks are always going to be, I'm always going to be doing that. But like, but like there's ways of doing all this. Like obviously time and money is a big thing, but like, I mean, I didn't have it when I first started out with the shark stuff, and I just found ways of, checking off those boxes. So, but saying that, it's also capitalizing on those, because I was so passionate about this, and because I knew like my certain skill set, I could probably capitalize on this. I just like, that's why I was so upset the first day when it messed up, because I'm just like, oh, come on. Like I want to do so well that they want me to come back here and do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, that's what it's slowly turning into. Hopefully it continues, but I've been doing lending my images out to Great White Adventures, the people that you're going through, and they've been super gracious about getting me out there, and hopefully starting to help teach some people with underwater photography.
Yeah.
I'm actually in talks right now with a company to sponsor my housing, because that's the next thing. Like, people come onto these boats and they have these incredible. Sorry, I didn't actually get to the second part of that. The surf housing I have, where it's very limiting. I actually have to, the difference is there's a surf housing, there's a dive housing. The surf housing, like I said, is built like a tank, and you can smash it against a wall, and it's probably going to be fine. Probably. I'm not going to do that, but, and then a dive housing, you can hook up strobes. You can do strobes on the surf one, but like you can have like spider arm strobes, and you can manipulate every single control. Every tiny little, there's levers for everything. It's easier to see through. There's all this, and you can make it less buoyant, because mine's not neutral. Which is great, because if I let go of it, it'll go to the surface.
Oh, cool.
But it's kind of taxing. Like, it's always pulling your hand up and stuff. So, there's definitely pros and cons, but for what I'm doing, a dive housing would be good, but dive housings are very expensive.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I'm in the process of trying to get sponsored with that right now.
That's, I mean, and that's cool, because you and I could talk about that, because, I'm going to, I have a Red video camera. And so, that's going to be important for me, is getting a housing for it, and whether I rent it, I mean, I can't afford to buy one. And so it's going to have to be either a sponsorship, or I'm going to have to find a way to rent it.
Right.
Because I obviously I can't get in the cage without it. And that's going to be really important for me to document that entire trip. And I do have to, it'd be remiss if I didn't thank you for being the inspiration. Cause I always, I saw Jaws when I was a little kid, which was probably not smart, but I'm glad I did, because, I fell in love with sharks, knew that they weren't these monsters, and then the San Jose Sharks came to town in like 91. And I was just like, how cool is it that my favorite team is also my favorite animal?
Yeah, man.
And I get to wear the jersey that has a shark on it, and the big shark head, and then, all the Jaws music for power plays and all that kind of stuff. And then, but I kind of in some ways lived vicariously through your Instagram, because I'm like, man, he's really doing it, and he just goes all the time, and he's giving it a shot. And so you helped kind of tear down the wall of like, how possible it is to do this. And that, like you said, you're not a marine biologist. You don't have special access. It's like, you just have to, of course, have the money, have the time, but also more importantly, you just have to do it. And so when you hooked me up with Nikki, and Nikki is awesome. And she just, was really pushing me, and was really like, hey, I got a spot open. And, what's that saying? The biggest mistake you make is thinking you have time,
right.
And it's just like, you know what, September, it's, I don't know how many months away, but I got to do it.
Too far.
Yeah, no, seriously. Far. I wish I could do it tomorrow.
I know.
But yeah, man. So yeah, thank you for, cause I hope that I can be that catalyst for other people. Like
I'm sure you are with this kind of stuff and all the rest. Like it's definitely, like even more than like you were saying, like time and money, it's just the desire to be able to, cause you'll always find, like, if you're really, really interested in something, I don't take for granted, like opportunities I've been given, or the living in such a beautiful area and all the rest. Like it's but it doesn't just happen. Like, it's not just handed to someone. Like some people they're born into it and that's just what happens. But like, other people's, I've been lucky that I've been able to turn, and I still am turning. It's definitely not stopping. I feel like, I use this analogy all the time. I feel like for a long time I was pushing a ball up a hill, like a giant boulder, and just like straining, and like sometimes I wanted to give up and let it roll back down, but just like getting it. And then I felt like about the time of like Stanley Cup and all that ball started rolling the other direction, where it was like people were coming to me to shoot stuff, and they were asking me, which is awesome, and that's what everyone strives for. But now it's actually almost worse, because I feel like I'm trying to catch that ball as it's falling that way,
right? Yeah.
And so it's not so much the grind of getting my name out there. Obviously it's still, I mean, you still have to upkeep that. But we were talking about this earlier, and I saw this quote from Zach Galifianakis, of all people, last week, and it was like, you have to destroy the idea that like you have to constantly be grinding, and I know this contradicts everything I just said a minute ago, but it's a very valuable lesson once you get to a certain level, that you need the ebbs and flows of a creative person are there. It's as important as it is to stay on top of your game and create and do really well when you do that, to also take the time, because it is only natural that you're gonna not feel as creative sometimes,
right?
And to recharge and to use that to reflect. And another thing that I did last year that I made a note to myself to remember is to celebrate victories, not in a arrogant way or braggery way, or braggery, is that even a word? Like you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I actually like that. I actually kind of like that better than what would be the word, braggy or braggadocious.
Yeah. Sure.
What's the whatever? I like braggery. We'll use that.
Okay. Not in that kind of way, but like to actually, because if you don't take the time to celebrate a victory, then like it's almost like you have, like I said again, you only have one shot at this, and like of life. So like you have to celebrate when you've been striving so hard for a certain thing, like you'll have this feeling like you have to take the time to celebrate it, because if not, you're just going to go crazy. You're going to be like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And as a driven entrepreneur or young professional or creative, you're going to have that feeling anyway of like, what is my next thing? But you have to take a minute to like be like, I did it. I made that goal happen. I'm stoked about that. Whether it's just, 10 minutes or a beer with a friend or whatever it is, like you're just like, oh, awesome. Like I feel like that's a good accomplishment. I can check that off a list, but like, that doesn't mean it's done. That just means like that's a goal. I've stepped on that rung of the ladder. Now it's like the next one. But also now I'm finding that I need, cause I used to start feeling really like anxiety would take over almost when I'm like, oh, I haven't taken a really cool photo that I liked in a while.
Yeah.
And it was just because like I'd had my camera glued to my face for like 2 months straight. And I was just like, I need to take a break. I need to stop. I need to recharge, whether it's like dive back into painting or drawing, or, I just recently got into 3D printing. So I've been doing a bunch of that. And then VR, just my son is obsessed. We finally got like a real VR set up and doing like 3-dimensional painting in there. I just did this big shark head that you can walk through. It's pretty gnarly.
Yeah, I think I saw that on your Instagram.
Yeah, it's on my Instagram.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, hard work, you do have to work hard at a lot of different points. You also have to work smart. And then you also have to find some balance and find some time for yourself. And I know there's a lot of theories out there that there is no work-life balance and there is no balance with your this and that and the other, but you can find a way to compartmentalize and spend the right time with each things. And maybe it doesn't last for very long, but you do need those moments where you kind of just shut down. And also for creative people to kind of refeed creativity. And it could be a vacation. Yeah. It could be a play, it could be a movie, it could be literally just hanging out with your kids or your wife or whatever it is. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because it's like, you do need to take some time for yourself, especially if you're an entrepreneur, especially if you're a creative person or more of an introverted person, definitely. Cause I know like this interaction is great. This definitely feeds my soul, but if I go to a chamber mixer or like an event and I have to be on for a lot of different people,
right.
Obviously I love talking to people. I love the people that I interact with, but that is draining for me.
Yeah.
Super draining for me. So I definitely need like, you know, a year hidden in a dark room so that I can get my energy back.
Well, you don't do good work if you're really like, if the further you're in that, like that spurt of creativity, like the more you try and flog that dead horse, like you're not going to be creating your best work. So it's like I usually start with an idea that I'm like really fired up about, and then like and then it like I start feeling myself waning from like the enthusiasm I had in the beginning, and that's about the time where I know like I might still be feeling in a creative mood, but I just might need to stop whatever this thing for a little bit. Not that I'm done with it, just like circle back, go do something else, go, like one of the other examples you had given, and just like come back to it when you feel right, you know? Don't force it. So
exactly. Yeah. And that's hard too sometimes because, as creative types, especially if we're on a deadline or, you know, we're like, we got to push something out. And, that can be hard, especially for creative process, because when you're ready, you're ready. And if you're not ready, then it's kind of
that does make it tricky. Deadlines do make it tricky, but
So I thought we'd just share a couple of your photos, and I'll show you a photo, and you just kind of briefly describe what's kind of going on there.
Sure.
So this is one of my favorite photos because and this is kind of what you told me, and this is what I got from Nikki as well, is that there's two cages essentially that you can get into. One is the more of the surface kind of level cages where they do kind of more of the hookah style breathing apparatus. You don't need a dive license for it. And then there's this one where you do need a dive license for it. And how far down is this?
So it all depends on what the current's doing.
Yeah.
So on the Solmar, there's two surface cages in the back, and then they have a submersible cage that's off the left side of the boat. Mm-hmm. And it's I think they go about 30 feet. I want to say it's about 30 feet. I think they can go deeper. I think I've heard up to 50, but they do it about 30 feet. And like I said, like the current, if pushing the cage way underneath the boat, they'll have to pull it up. And sometimes they can't put it in because but it's very rare for that to happen. So this picture, I'm actually not dive certified, but, and Nikki yells at me all the time about it. But for me, I like my love affair with light. I love the interaction at the surface, and that's where usually the exciting stuff happens anyway. That being said, that cage down there, the perspective you get looking up at the boat and the two cages is incredible. And usually the biggest sharks stay down lower anyway. Mm-hmm. And the older they get, the bigger they get, the wiser they get. So they're onto our game. So they're like, nah. But last year was a particularly sharky year. Mm-hmm. And on this particular trip we had, it used to be rare in Guadalupe to see, if you got 3 sharks in a frame, that was insane. Mm-hmm. The sharks are usually, they'll come through, they might play with you for a bit, and then take off. Some sharks will just pass right by, not even, and then other sharks will hang out for an hour. So it all depends kind of what's going on. And I think this one day we had, I think the entire trip itself, we had 40 some individual sharks, and that was staggering. But and then this particular day, I think I had a frame with 7 or 8 sharks in the frame.
Wow, that's incredible.
So this is looking down from the surface cages. So you'll notice if any of you guys check out my Instagram, it's like I said, I love light, so I love the way the light goes through the water, especially Guadalupe, because it's so clear. Yep. That's why it's Shark Week goes there and all the rest of it. It's because the clarity you get is insane. So I love jumping in early in the morning because you get those amazing shafts of light as the sun's just coming up. You get those all the way through the day, but just that moody, dark, these sudden, and so this was I think this is actually evening. But we just had a bunch of sharks hanging out with us, and there's 3, and they're just checking out. You'll notice on that photo too, the door, I think the cage door, is the door open in that, or is it shut?
It's shut.
Yeah. So they used to have a cage on the submersible cage. They didn't have a door. It would just be open. So the sharks would, But yeah, so they're doing what they do 99% of the time on that one. They just do these like really close, but circles just around the cage, looking at what the guys are doing. And they'll do a circle around that cage and then come up to us and then come back down and do these kind of big arcs.
So they're just that's just kind of they're checking things out.
They're just seeing what's going on. Like, why are you guys down here now?
Yeah, why are you guys in our space?
Yeah, like the bubbles and like some Dean he's known for like he's got a big his camera case is clear and it's got these big metal shiny clamps on it to hold it shut, and he sticks it out and he shakes it around because like the light and the gets them excited, and they come check them out and stuff.
Oh, that's very cool. All right, so this I got to ask you about because these are two of my favorite guys in the entire world. Yeah,
so this was after our commercial was filmed. They brought him back for their next commercial. So it's Burns and Thornton, and this is funny. So I'm an art director for a winery up in Napa called Dakota Shy. Incredible winery, and it's doing really well. But so this one was funny to me because they were cheering on a sommelier who's just like off screen right there. So, and these two they love their red wine. They both are big wine boys. Yeah. So,
and the Sharks just had their wine
event. Like last week. And I had a lot of friends pouring there too, which was cool.
That's awesome.
So yeah, this was just a still. They asked me to come take some behind the scenes stuff. So, that was just one of the. I thought it was funny with them sitting in an Italian restaurant in their uniform.
Yeah, I love. It's so funny how like gnarly their beards are. I know Thornton shaved his, but his is like basically almost back.
Yeah,
it's like
I think he missed it. You always have that beard regret when you take it off. So.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is cool. Kind of just pivoting away from I guess the Sharks in general.
Yeah.
So this one was cool because, so go ahead and explain this.
Okay, so I used to, for 10 years, almost 10 years, we lived in Livermore, California, just outside Bay Area, and it's a really cool place because it's got that old town kind of feel, but it's, we're really close to the Central Valley, but also we're 40 minutes from San Francisco. Yeah. So it's, it was an amazing place I lived there through college, and then we bought our first house there, and it was amazing. Where our house was, it backed onto this like huge open field that has never been developed, and it's got these incredible hills in the background. And so I had built this kind of deck to look up over that because the sunsets we would get were absolutely incredible. So I let alone the wildlife that'd be back there. Like I'm a big birds of prey guy, so there's like lots of peregrines and there was a golden eagle back there when we first moved in, and lots of cool birds. So I used to just hang out there, and especially when my oldest was pretty small, like 3 or 4. We used to him and I used to just go out and walk around back there, and he would carry around a 35 millimeter film camera that didn't work, but he would just go out there and take pictures of me. So that photo there is one of the amazing sunsets. Unfortunately, that's during when we had those really bad wildfires in Santa Rosa. And, with those wildfires, you get those incredible sunsets, but it would literally, like, every night there'd just be this, like, ball in the air, the sun dropping down behind those hills. But I silhouetted a bunch because it's amazing how much, the thoroughfare that's above those hills is, like, it's Oakland International, it's SFO, and then it's, like, anytime the Coliseum was having anything, like the Goodyear blimp would be above those hills, so I get these amazing silhouettes with those guys on top of it. And let alone, I love airplanes. My brother's a pilot, but Blue Angels have a very special place in my heart. But F-18s in general, like F-15s and 18s are my favorites. So they used to, when they'd have opening day, they'd use Livermore as their like circling pattern before they fly over like A's game and stuff. So that was always fun seeing them above those hills. But so Livermore is an incredible place. Just it's a cool mixture, and it's great for photography.
Yeah, very cool. All right, last but not least, we'll go back to Sharks because this is, you've a lot of your work. In fact, we'll talk off air about some of the other stuff I would like to have, but this is my favorite. And
yeah.
And in fact, it's my screensaver. On my computers, and then also I'm working on getting a huge metal print of it from my office, and so this is was this from the first shoot or
second year?
And what do you call this one? You have a special
What
name?
Lies Beneath?
Yeah. I love the water line.
Yeah.
I think that's I mean, obviously the shark, everything is perfectly composed, but it's really the water line.
Yep. And it's one of those, it's in photography, you have kind of happy mistakes. Yeah. And it's above and under shots they're very tough, especially to frame. They're very tough because it's kind of spray and pray. Mm-hmm. And like I was saying before, a lot of guys set their when they're shooting underwater stuff, they'll set their focus at like a certain range and just leave it there. Although they'll bang up their aperture so everything's in focus. I tend to, I don't do any of that. So the autofocus in these cameras is incredible, and like the 3D tracking is incredible. Yeah. So I'll do like a single point, and then as long as it locks onto that one, and I'm moving my camera around, it's going to stay on that one point. But for above and under shots like that one, it's hard because the water's right in the middle, so you don't want it focusing on that. So sun was just coming up, and we're facing in Guadalupe. When you pull in, it takes 22 hours to get out there on the boat, so it's a long time. And you get there in the morning, and it's like getting to Jurassic Park. It's like this it's incredible. It's this incredibly majestic looking, like snaggly rock. It looks like if you I always tell people, they're like, what is it like? I'm like, well, imagine somewhere you think there'd be a lot of great white sharks, like what it would look like, and that's pretty much exactly what it looks like. There's no vegetation, it's just these huge volcanic rocks and a bunch of seals. But we park in, so it's like kind of it's a little rough around there because it's open ocean, so you're left to the mercy of Mother Nature until you get into the seclusion of this. The island itself is a volcano, and where we stop is the crater, and it's on its side. So it's really, really deep right where we stop, but it's completely protected from the swell that's coming from further out open ocean. So you get in there, and it's just dead calm. And in the morning, it usually has these incredible sunrises because the clouds tend to break around the island, and then it leaves above you pretty much open. But then they form up again over there, and that's where the sun's coming up. So you get these nice cloudy bits to catch the light and all the rest. So it was a beautiful sunrise, and there was already sharks in the water. They'll start baiting at 6 a.m. So they have 2 milk crates that they zip tie together, and they put like fish heads and guts and all the rest, and they put that between the cages right at 6 a.m. And so it's like leaching out all the stuff into the water and getting everyone excited. And even the wranglers will go out and throw their bait in and just watch. But it's those guys are super talented because the water is pitch black at that point. It looks like oil. But they know what to look for. They know the silhouettes and all the rest. So I had been hanging out, and I can't sleep on those. Like actually, that's what you're exhausted by the end of the day. So like I'll sleep, but when 4:30 comes around, like I'm like, I get up, get my camera ready, get like 7 or 8 cups of coffee so I can pee in my wetsuit the rest of the day, and just like getting everything all situated. And I remember there was a couple sharks around, and it's on the dive deck. So like you step down to the back of the Solmar, and there's this metal, really impressive like stanchion that comes off of it. And I was just on my knees, kind of holding it. No one was up. It was just a wrangler, and he could see down further than I could, because when you're elevated, you can obviously. He's wearing polarized sunglasses and all that. The refraction isn't as bad. For me, it's just like just highlights from the sunrise. Right. So it's like I can barely see anything. So I just had to kind of go off of when he's like, "Oh, there's shark coming." So he's baiting him in. So the shark's actually coming towards the bait, and I was just holding. And I got literally, that was the only frame in focus, and the other ones were not. So it's one of those, like, I had an idea. I didn't know how it was going to turn out. I've seen there's a bunch of really amazing video I've seen of above and under shots. Lots of video that I've seen from there, but I haven't really seen that many like photos that people have done. So that one, and that just kind of it worked out, thank God. But it went, it's probably the one that's done the best for me. I mean, I've had a couple other ones now on my Instagram since then but that one people really got excited about, which was awesome. That's always my goal. It's just I get to share, and it shows a good that's a good example of what these guys are like. 90, like I said, 95% of the time they're just docile.
Yeah, just
super aerodynamic, just cruising. And he was out for a little morning swim and saw some food, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, let's do that."
Yeah, no, it's such a great photo, and I, like I said, I can't wait to blow it up and print it on aluminum or metal so that I can enjoy it instead of it just being on my.
I appreciate that, man.
On my,
I can't wait to see it on metal. It's gonna look awesome.
Yeah, and we'll have to talk about some more of your work, because when I went to your home studio, I saw a bunch of stuff. I was just like, okay, I need to look at my wall space. So how can people follow you? What are the best places to follow you?
I mean, I have, so my handle on Instagram is Euanart, EUANART.
Cool.
If you just put that into Google, my website's there too. My website's a lot of my old, commercial, and, I still do family stuff and all, I'll shoot anything, but, I got away from the weddings. Don't do them as much. But then I have a website. It's a lot of that. It's a lot of those. They're on my blog that links off my website. There's lots more examples and stuff, but mainly
what's the website?
It's Euanart as well.
Okay, so yeah, EUANART.com.
Correct.
Yeah, cool.
Yep, and you can link there to my Instagram and the blog as well. But the Instagram is the thing I pretty much, that and my Facebook are the two things that I, just because of the ease of getting stuff up. But yeah, you're welcome to friend me on Facebook. I have a Euanart page on Facebook, but I just use that to link to my photos from Instagram.
Yeah. So
I don't really post any kind of manicured content for that. But on my website, on my Facebook, I tend to keep my Instagram more for the Sharks stuff now.
Yeah.
I've kind of grown my base that way, and I'm
sure.
that's what they're there for.
Yeah.
So my Facebook is definitely like if I get a good one of my kids, or if I shoot something else that's interesting, I'll definitely post it there with a little write up or whatever it is. But that's more like, that's just my life stuff. And I keep that completely open. Like, I don't have anything hidden on there, so.
Yeah, very cool, man. Well, yeah, so we'll have to have you after our trip down to Guadalupe. We'll have to have you back on and talk about.
Let's see how your experience is. Yeah,
yeah.
I can't wait to do that.
Yeah, and I hope I have some really cool video from that as well. So man, so thank you so much for coming on and taking the time. I mean, we could talk for hours about sharks and cameras and the San Jose Sharks and all that. But yeah, man, thank you so much for coming on, and looking forward to seeing what other stuff you've got. And for those, we'll end it on this note. For those that follow Euan, if you want to repost his stuff, please make sure you attribute.
Not just me. It's he's going off of a rant I had a couple weeks ago where it's like it's easy. It's super easy this day and age to just take an image that you see and repost it. But if you can take the time to find out who shot it and give them the dues, it's important. It's important for creators and just like kind of a respect thing in general. It's like, I love when people repost my stuff. It's awesome. But like, I really don't like it when there's no mention of, because it's the time and it's all the rest
work
of it. Right. So you want to,
going back to your copyright class.
Exactly.
So thanks again, everybody, for listening. Thank you to Euan for coming on. I really appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
Make sure you follow him on Instagram, Facebook, check out his website, and we'll see you next time.